Well, to discuss all of this, joining me now from Berlin is Frederike Kaltheuner. She's a tech policy expert. Thanks again for being with us on Counting the Cost. First of all, if we can start with the antitrust case against Apple. Now, the US government is going after one of the largest and most powerful companies in the world. Just how big a deal is this?
This is a very big deal, and it sends a very positive signal, not just to consumers, but also to app developers globally. I think what's very important here is that you cannot see this case in isolation. It's part of a wider push of the US government that started in 2019, and there are ongoing cases against Alphabet, against Amazon, against Meta. So this isn't in isolation. What has happened in the last 2 decades is that in the absence of regulatory action, we have allowed tech companies to amass unprecedented power. And that's a real risk for innovation, for consumers, for prices, but also for the future of technology. So a big deal and a very positive signal.
Apple's argument, though, is that it tightly controls its ecosystems to help protect its consumers. Are regulators going too far here?
Not at all. First of all, we have to see what the outcome will be. Breaking up Apple is on the table, but that may not actually be the desired outcome. Apple brands itself as a company that prioritizes privacy and security. And to an extent, that is true. Apple has taken the FBI to court over backdooring its systems. Apple has also successfully stepped in where regulators have failed. So Apple has pushed back against highly invasive third-party tracking on apps. All of these things are very positive, but they're also just half of the story. What the DOJ alleges is that Apple is very selective in where and how it protects consumer privacy. And a really good example is China. So Apple is active in China, and Apple has ceded to power from or pushbacks from the Chinese government to remove VPNs, for example, from its app store. And there are also all cloud services in China are also backdoored. So this is a selective treatment of privacy.
The EU, as we mentioned, is also trying to crack down on the big tech companies. Can you just break that down for us, their investigation, and exactly what regulators in the EU are trying to do?
So that may come as a surprise to people, but the EU is actually a bit behind in the US when it comes to competition. The Digital Markets Act is designed to rein in platform power, but the verdict is still very much out on whether it will be effective. What we have seen so far is that the Commission has designated 6 companies as so-called gatekeepers. We have now seen that these companies have somewhat reluctantly made some changes. For example, Apple now allows apps to be purchased outside of its app store. That's a first and only in the EU. But what the Commission is doing now, it is probing these companies' compliance. That's a lengthy process that will take up to a year. So we have to see what will come out of it.
Yeah, I guess how far are regulators prepared to go here, do you think? Or how far do you think they should go? Should we see a breakup of some of these massive companies?
What's really fascinating is that the DOJ has called this case against Apple historic and draws a parallel against the famous case against Microsoft in the 90s. The DOJ really argues that what's at stake here is the future of technology. And the argument is that Apple has moved from innovating the smartphone market to stalling innovation. And the government sees a need to step in order to create the conditions in which we can see more exciting products, more apps, and cheaper phones.
Okay, so just on that point, Frederike, will any of this, I mean, how likely is it that we are actually going to see, as consumers, likely to see lower prices?
Look, I think what's a bit confusing about this case is that Apple has a very strong brand. People love iPhones, but that's really not the issue here. The issue here is that Apple has monopoly power. It's that it is using the power to extract money from consumers and developers and content creators, and that Apple has engaged in exclusionary and anti-competitive conduct to maintain its monopoly. So this case is very technical, but the consequences may be very beneficial for consumers who may see more innovation, more choice, lower prices. And then the second audience of this is really app developers who have been forced to play by rules that primarily benefit Apple. So we may see different apps, we may see cloud apps, we may see more gaming apps. At least that is the hope of this case.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. But as always, we really do appreciate your time and your insight. Frederike Kaltheuner, tech policy expert. Thank you.
Thank you.